Welcome to Ember Igniters, the podcast that sets your soul ablaze. I'm Jenna Wilmers with Fran Malfer, your Ember Igniters. So today we're going to talk about communication hazards, how to avoid the pitfalls. So I got to tell you a story, right? So my husband and I, we were home the other night, and he was being so kind and trying to honor me. And so he was like kind of doing all these little things in the kitchen while I was cooking dinner. And I was trying to honor him by cooking dinner so he didn't have to do anything. Oh. And so a couple of times we kind of felt ourselves come at like almost like an impasse, because I'm trying to make dinner, but then he's trying to do the dishes. And you don't want to yell at a guy for doing the dishes, okay?
Yeah,
right.
I mean, that's awesome.
Right. And I'm so thankful. But then all of a sudden he's just like, oh, I'm just trying to help.
Oh, how many times have we heard that, right?
Yes. And I was so thankful in that moment that he was just trying to help. And and I didn't want to diminish that, because my husband is such an example for our son in honoring me. And it's funny because my son will do things and he will say, I'm just trying to honor you, Mom. And it just totally melts your heart. But it's a pitfall sometimes.
Yeah, you think you're saying something that you're going to be encouraging someone with, and they turn it around and say, is that what you really think about me?
Right.
I mean, sometimes, you're thinking, this would be encouraging. I'm just going to say, you do a good job with your son, and then maybe there's a little tag thing that you stick on the end and you don't realize it because you think you're doing such a great job with your son. I've noticed though that he doesn't tend to really want to pay attention to you, and all of a sudden you think you're just being helpful, and that little thing at the end is like, are you telling me I'm not a good parent?
Well, and why is it a little jab?
I don't know.
Like in that moment, you're like,
Exactly. So when we said communication hazards, what we were really saying is that a lot of times we just talk, and I'm going to be honest with you. My mouth operates faster than my brain. So, they always say, think before you talk.
But that's so hard.
I mean,
right?
I have to admit that there are way too many times in my life when things came out of my mouth that I had thought to myself later, if you had just taken a moment there and thought about what you were about to say, you might have said it differently. And so even sometimes when I've had to try to communicate anything, I've had that feeling. Where do I go with that? What happens?
Well, and even that whole moment, like sometimes, which I'm very guilty of, I tend to sometimes interrupt people. And it's not because I'm rude or anything like that, but it's partly because that thinking, that thinking mechanism where somebody will say something and then I'll be like this, boom, I've got this light bulb thing that I want to share with you, and I think it's so amazing. But the thing is that if I wait until you finish what you're saying, I forgot. And then I'm just kind of like, And I think it was John Maxwell that said, you shouldn't listen to respond, you should listen to really listen. And I'm like, but then how is that a conversation? Because if I got nothing to respond with,
isn't that an interesting thing?
We got nothing to say.
It's an interesting thing that's what we think about communication is you speak, I respond. You speak, I respond. And sometimes, honestly, like myself, I sort of verbally regurgitate. That's what I call it. It's not like I'm looking for someone to give me a response. It's like I'm just verbally processing something out